Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name's Joe Kuzma, and joining me here for some Monday morning quarterbacking post-game show following the Steelers' victory 32-13 over the Las Vegas Raiders. One Mr. Brian E. Roach. Brian, what's going on, my friend?
It's a Monday, and it's a victory Monday, and I'm always happy to be alive on a victory Monday.
Yeah, I'm happy to be alive on most Mondays, victory or not, but aside from the point.
Well, last Monday, I wasn't that happy about it.
Oh, never. Well, that's a little different. You know what? But you were able to be unhappy at like 1 a.m. when the game actually ended on Monday. Yes. There was something. Weren't we talking about this the last time? Where like Dak Prescott was like the first quarterback ever in NFL history to throw a touchdown pass in the same game, but 2 different days or something like that. It was like really, that's really strange. If they ever had restarted maybe that DeMar Hamlin game with the Bills and Bengals, I'm sure that could have been some goofy, trivia question type stuff too, but alas, they never did. And anyways, makes you wonder sometimes. I was like, geez, are they ever going to get that game going? But we didn't have to deal with any of this. They're in a dome in Vegas. That was nice. Steelers fans taking over. And it's weird because you mentioned you feel better this week than last week, but I have to say that last week there was like this drive with Justin Fields at the end of the game that puts the Steelers ahead. But then you feel down in the dumps because it goes down to 4th down to the final seconds, and you have this play, and the Cowboys pull it out, and they win by 1. You've been feeling kind of crappy because then it's back-to-back losses. You feel like they're winnable games. You get into this one, and you're like, man, this Raiders team isn't very good. But they've been successful against the AFC North. And now you've got a quarterback that they're putting out there that you don't really have film on. You don't have all these tendencies. You don't know everything about it. But we've been here before, right? They're without Devontae Adams, without Jacoby Myers, without Zamir White, without some offensive linemen, without players on defense, Christian Wilkins. And you're just like, this should be a shoo-in for the Steelers. And they scored 30-some points. Everybody's happy now. It's no longer fire Mike Tomlin territory. But you and I are sitting here kind of like, now, wait a second. Should we pump the brakes on being too excited about this? Not the result. A W is a W. You don't need style points for the W. But maybe pump the brakes on some of that excitement because we're not sure this is a sustainable kind of process that the Steelers have here.
Well, I'm going to say very clearly it is not a sustainable process. We've talked about this multiple times. When do they win? When the defense gets multiple turnovers, because that's how the defense gets stops half of the time, it seems like. In this game, add in, depending on our wonderful friends in the zebra costumes, who we love and think are fantastic, and they don't stink at all. Yes, they do, but they stunk on our side this time. They stunk for us. So, but it's not what we saw in that game is not a sustainable formula for long-term success because it's too dependent on a lot of variables that you cannot consistently reproduce, even if your name is TJ Watt.
Well, TJ's on a whole other planet, right? We're pretty sure that he's an alien.
Correct.
But I was looking at some of this. I said how the Raiders and how the Steelers were kind of comparable going into this. There were some bodies on this field where there were numbers like Ogundeji and Leota. And, I see the names. I couldn't even tell you what they were wearing. I know that Moon had 49. I think Ogundeji had 48, the old Bud Dupree number. There was like the all hands on deck, but there was only one actual statistical sack by Cam Hayward in this game. They only got to Aiden O'Connell like once. And we're going to be talking about offense and quarterback and everything like this, but it really was a defensive game. But O'Connell still completed 67.5% of his passes. He had 40 pass attempts, 227 yards, a touchdown and an interception. He only took the 1 sack. Brock Bowers all over the field, caught 9 of his 10 targets for 71 yards. And it did look like there might have been a struggle. I remember at the very beginning of the game, I have these multiple texts flying around. You and I were one of them. Same thing with my cousin. He's already ready, like, well, this is going to be one of those games. They march down the field, the Raiders do, and they score. And I've been so like hesitant at getting upset on opening drives, particularly this year. Like in the past, I'm like, you know what? I don't like this. You don't ever want to give up right on the opening score. But like within one of the first two series, the team goes right down there. What I'm thinking to myself is, I'm looking for something here, like a notepad, and I can't find one. But I'm thinking that the offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, whoever's being successful on whichever side of the ball, they had a whole week to put this thing together on paper, which plays or the alternate plays that they're going to run on versus whatever looks. Yeah. And it worked, and they seen something on film, and maybe that still hasn't been fixed on the Steelers side. They didn't realize that it was something, or this is something we have to fix. It's been done to us twice now, but fool me once. Maybe it was just whatever. And they go by the game script. You get to halftime and you run out of game script. Halftime adjustments is a real thing. You no longer have the full game script for these coordinators and coaches. Now you have to make these adjustments, do a little bit more improv, creativity on the fly when it comes to what you've got in your playbook. You've already exhausted maybe 25 plays, 30 plays you have on your script. And then that's where I defy the other teams to outcoach Mike Tomlin, outcoach Arthur Smith, outcoach Terrell Austin. And damn near all season long, we've seen it. We saw the Falcons, where the Steelers come back out, and they were solid second half. They put the clamps down on defense. The Colts game wasn't going so well, but the offense started getting it figured out, and Justin Fields being the slow starter. But I wasn't sitting there just like, it was like one of those, they're in Vegas, or they're playing the Raiders on the road kind of feelings. It was just like, okay, let me wait this out and see what ends up happening. And as the game went on, particularly the second half of the game, the defense just really came alive. But when you dig into the stats, there's just like that one sack. There was 2 quarterback hits by Cam Hayward, 1 by Landon Roberts. There was a slew of tackles for loss, though. A lot of negative plays by the Raiders, and they really shot themselves in the foot, as you had mentioned, with penalties. The Steelers, only 2 first downs by penalty, but there were big ones. One of them negated a Justin Fields interception. And you just can't tattoo a guy or hit him late. And it bailed them out. And you had to acknowledge it bailed them out because the Steelers were only 4 of 13, 31% on third downs. They got the 1 fourth down. They barely even edged out the Raiders as far as yardage. They had 2 additional offensive plays and got 293 yards to 275. The time of possession, the Steelers were at 31:51, so just not even quite 2 minutes more. It's not a huge discrepancy. That could be done just in garbage time and kneeling it out, burning out from the 2-minute warning, right? So I think the big thing was run defense for the Steelers, run offense for the Steelers, and obviously the turnovers. When you've got a TJ Watt, it's like being the Avengers and saying, we've got a Hulk. And he goes out there, and not only does he punch the ball out once, he punches it out twice, to which finally gets me to go on X and tweet out and say, this is your defensive MVP, folks. So, yes. I mean, it purely defensively, and it should have done this, Brian, right? Because they're playing a bunch of Raiders backups.
Absolutely. It is when you watch the game, you can see TJ having to not go through one guy, not go through 2 guys, most of the time going through 3 different guys. That's what happens when there's nobody on the other side that the other team has to worry about. You got getting any consistent pressure off of the other side of the ball means they can do whatever they want to do to try and keep TJ out of wrecking the game. And yet TJ finds a way to wreck the game. In a different way than we're used to, but nonetheless as impactful. And that's just because TJ is who he is. It's my concern is that don't always work, right? We've seen TJ punch at balls and not hit the ball, right? We've seen him punch at balls and hurt his hand. So it doesn't always work. My concern, and the reason I said at the beginning of this, is it's not a sustainable idea, thought or process here. It's not sustainable to depend on that. It's not sustainable to depend on the interceptions. The offense certainly can't be dependent on getting roughing the passer penalties in order to, negate bad plays or get first downs and get bailed out. The offense had an inordinate number of, false starts throughout this game.
Yeah.
There so many sloppy. It really, the final score is not indicative of how sloppy that game looked. If they don't get that roughing the passer on the interception, could be a different game. If they don't get the other roughing the passer and it ends up being, fourth down, could be a different game. TJ misses the punch out on the 2-yard line or the 1-yard line, whatever it is. It's a different game. This was not a dominating win. And that's what you sort of expected in this Raiders game, is for the defense to be dominating, but it's going to be hard with missing pieces. And the offense, let's hope, fingers crossed, Zach Frazier's not hurt for any length of time. But it's just, man.
Oh, the injuries with this team is just insane, dude. And yeah, I'm hoping that maybe, Charles Davis. I love Charles Davis. Charles Davis reminds me a lot of this generation's or the next generation Gil Brandt. They know every little town and college that somebody went to, who coached who, like position coaches. They were, 20 years ago, he was coaching this guy in Pee-wee football or something like that. Like he knows.
He was talking about going to an Eagles concert.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, when Glenn Fryer was still around. Like that was.
Yeah.
Dude, he had me cracking up so much because I think I've been in the opposite position where it's like, hey, he's like, I'm only one of 5 brothers at this place or something like that. It's like,
yeah,
hey, I like my jazz and R&B and stuff too. So it's like I've been there too. You had me cracking up, but that was funny, man. Like he brings this stuff up and he's talking about Zach Frazier and him in his wrestling background in high school. He did this. He he snapped his leg and he still went out there and pinned somebody or whatever the nonsense was, well, he hurt himself in college, obviously, but, yeah. And he was talking about, he was back on the sideline. Maybe he would come back, and the Steelers didn't need him to. It was much like, we were in a position too, where we're watching this game and we're watching how the offense is, stinketh at times. And you're like, do we need to bring this player out? Do we need to change something up? But for the 6th straight week, this offensive line unit has again shifted and changed. I have to see when Frazier got hurt. Third quarter, maybe.
I think third quarter, maybe
I think
fourth,
so too.
But I think third.
Yeah, and so Ryan McCullum comes out. And he does fine. He does an adequate job. They're playing from a position of strength. Let me see what the score was. Let me see if I actually can pull up when Frazier. He was injured third quarter. Okay, pretty deep into the third quarter. It was actually the play before the Najee Harris 36-yard TD run. And let's talk about that for a second. Najee Harris. Boy, he made me a little nervous on this. He did get to the pylon.
It was a little scary because if that was not on the line, I was worried about the fumble out of bounds and we get nothing. Najee, I know if you haven't watched Najee's after game interview, you have to watch it because it cracks me up. Because in the middle of it, he goes, I don't know interviews. I stink at interviews. I don't know what you guys want me to say. I don't know how to answer your questions. But what I would have asked him in that is, did you have any concerns? And his answer would, of course, been no, I have no concerns. But that was, again, close to a fumble out of the end zone and the ball goes back the other way. That was not my favorite run that Najee ran.
Oh, no.
That was my second favorite run that Najee ran. The angry run that was earlier in the first half, where he's just pinballing off of people. The one where he broke the one guy's ankles, that was not my favorite one. That's actually third, because that was sort of boring. It was a nice run, but it was boring. There wasn't a lot of, but the runs where he's just dragging people for 10 yards. Those are the angry Najee runs that I miss and I want to see. And I was glad to see him. Look, Najee played great. Don't get me wrong. I have no problems with Najee. He made me a little scared with the dive because I was a little worried, but luckily it hit the end zone in the end line, and it was all good. But we've seen them screw that call up, and it makes me nervous. I don't like depending on the refs for anything.
Or the replay, more or less, whatever they could slow down and figure out. And it was like, oh, by this centimeter. Now we got it on camera. And 14 carries, 106 yards, a 7.6 average, the 36-yard long, and the first touchdown that he's run for this season. Finally, somebody other than Justin Fields scampering for a TD, of which Fields had 2 with his feet. And, it was a big day on the ground for the Steelers overall because Fields ran it 11 times for 59 yards. We'll get to Fields more in a little bit. Jonathan Ward came out 3 for 13. Jaylen Warren, only 6 for 7. Kind of slow moving, kind of
not what first game back.
Yeah, not what you're anticipating. But Najee Harris was running like a guy that was like, hey, I know this other guy is healthy behind me, and we're both going to be up for contracts. And he ran with purpose, and almost Derrick Henry-like. How he gets compared all the time to Derrick Henry coming out of college. And I get sick of the people that are like, well, Najee doesn't do this, or Najee isn't good at this, or there's some valid criticism to that. But at the same time, I always felt like not only is Najee a quality player, but he's dependable. And when you actually get him some guys that could, decently block and set up these runs, a lot of times he's had to do it for himself. He's had to do it on his own just to make sure that there aren't negative plays. And he finally gets 100 yards in a game. We don't know his contract status or whatever is uncertain, but is there anyone when Ben Roethlisberger was heading into retirement year that had said with our first round pick that it shouldn't have been Najee Harris? That's revisionist history altogether. So I get kind of tired of that where it's like, well, they could have taken someone else other than getting a running back or blah, blah, blah. Well, Travis Etienne goes out. He gets selected by the Jaguars the very next pick. And he gets hurt in camp and he's done for the entire. He doesn't even play his rookie year. Then and now there's questions of his health and whether or not he's on the trading block with a dumpster fire team that's in Jacksonville. You don't have these same questions, I think, with Najee Harris. And he added he caught 2 passes for 16 yards. He's been lacking these 100-yard games. He's been splitting a lot of the work for so long. But look when the Steelers were successful last year, Brian, against the Seahawks and Ravens, the final 2 games of the year. The only 2 100-yard games that Najee had. And I mean, it was a little bit of slogging for him, particularly weather and the conditions. December football, raining in Baltimore, 27 carries and 26 carries, 122 yards, 2 TDs, 112 and 1 touchdown. You got to go back. He didn't even have a 100-yard season in 2022. I could go maybe when they played, nope, not in the 22 season either. You would have had to go all the way back to when they played the Cleveland Browns in week 17 of the 21 season, which would have been January of 2022, technically, and his rookie season, to go back to some meaningful 100-yard games. It's kind of crazy how that ends up working out. I do believe I'll go back on that. The 22 season, he did have one against the Ravens, so that was played in 23. So when I'm looking at the dates, but you get one here or there. It just felt way more natural. This felt like a Najee Harris game. This felt like the team. This felt like what he should have been doing the previous week against the Dallas Cowboys.
Boy, did it.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe he's finally arrived and, and still getting some of it done without Zach Frazier gets hurt. And on the very first play, boom, Zach Frazier's out. And then all of a sudden he takes off. Got to hope that the offensive line stays healthy, my friend, because they need more of this. The run game certainly opens up the passing game for whoever the quarterback may be.
Well, there's an interesting line. There were so many free runners at Justin Fields yesterday. Max Crosby was fine, right? I mean, he got his sack. Did he get just one, I think?
I believe so. Let me look. They had more than 1 sack overall in the game. So Divine Diablo had gotten 1. Yep. Crosby got a half. Kayvon Chasen got a full sack, and the other half was Jenkins, defensive lineman.
So I mean that there was a considerable amount of pressure, and what bothered me the most, and again this may come down to nothing more than bad communication on the offensive line. There were just too many free runners, and I don't feel like the Raiders constantly were bailing out trying to get to him, but there was, we know he has a tendency to hold the ball, but this wasn't even that. He just, that Diablo sack. I mean, there was nothing he could do. Completely. I mean and then he blew up that other play too. The one that, no, that was the sack. That was the ridiculous flea flicker play. I mean, Pat blew that block.
Should have just held on it should have just held on to the ball to begin with, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, that was they sussed that out. But that's the problem I have is I'm still questioning the pass blocking of the offensive line. Maybe if they can get the run blocking in place, and we can have some consistent, solid running games, but I'm still not feeling good that this line is gelling yet and playing where they need to play.
Well, how can they? Again, you have Frazier come out now. It's like McCormick's just starting to play, and I don't know that we ever thought McCormick was going to be. It looked pretty weak coming off that right side of the line, and then Dan Moore. Like there were times where they would just overload him, and it's like he's got to pick one or the other. But he also had a whiff. There was definitely pressure coming, and Crosby's one of the top pass rushers. He's right up there with TJ. So
you expect him,
You give him the respect, and they certainly did with the tight ends that are out there. But this is going to be
Darnell did not look good.
No,
not blocking. He did not look good blocking.
No, and a lot of guys didn't. And I mean, when they had the back. So this is where it comes down to. This is going to be the big question now. Is you watch this game. This is where we're kind of like, why aren't you guys excited? We're the most rainbow and sunshine and unicorns guys that do this type of stuff, right? To have these shows. We're nothing but positivity, my friend. We are nothing but this is a win. I feel like there's more people that are on social media and stuff that are having the conversation of keeping Justin Fields out there. And we looked at this objectively. This was last night following the game. And we took a look at the Steelers. So nine plays, 37 yards, field goal. And then 10 plays, 53 yards, field goal. But they had a 3 and out in between that. 8 plays, 41 yards, punt, no points at all. I believe that might have been the one where they tried the trick play and it didn't end up going anywhere. They get a touchdown before half, but they almost got into a position where they were going to give up 3 points. The Raiders were using their timeouts, and Antonio Pierce, the clock management was smart there. But I will, I'll give Fields some credit there, but it was a short field. This was off the fumble. It was 6 plays for 18 yards to get that touchdown. And there could have been a turnover in the middle of this interception.
Yep.
Let's see here. Second quarter, that was right at 119 left. Right to a linebacker, right to Divine Diablo. So they get this back. Roughing the passer took them from 3rd and 4 at the 24, and no points at all. You don't even get the field goal out of this, where the game is still 7-6. Now they go for the 2-point conversion and don't end up getting it. But, Fields, they go for it on 4th and 1. And this is the good Fields part, where you're like, okay, he uses his leg. He gives you some mobility. He gives you some stuff maybe some other guys do. But it doesn't feel like a Lamar Jackson thing, where we were praising Justin Fields for the Chargers game, for even the Colts, some of the stuff he did. He was standing in the pocket. Could he do that in this game? It was disrupted, but it felt like he would give a look, and then it was takeoff mode. It was like Josh Dobbs, where I used to criticize some of the things, and rightfully so, what ended up happening with Dobbs last year. Some teams figured him out. they just start stacking the box. They're not throwing anything deep. He's not able to connect with any passes. But luckily for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I saw fans about this too, Brian, why'd they ever let Robert Spillane go? He's got his little captain's patch on there. He's leading the NFL in tackles. Well, that's because the Raiders are playing defense for over a half hour in every single game, and he makes a lot of tackles. But you see what happened was they got guys like him and Diablo that aren't the best coverage middle linebackers, and they don't account for Justin Fields, and he could scamper around and do whatever. But otherwise, it was a little struggle early on with some of the running. Najee's into the pile, and then the pile gets to move another 5 yards because he doesn't go down. Good on Najee to move the pile, but they're still getting stonewalled because there's like 8 dudes there in the box. They're not backing anybody up. So Fields does good here. He sees there's guys that are covered, but there were opportunities, other spots on the field where there were certainly some plays that were left out there. And does kind of leave me questioning, yeah, he was able to keep him afloat with his feet, but that's just not sustainable.
Yeah, we've talked about this in the past as well, and I'll say it again. Justin looks the best when he doesn't have to come off the way the play was designed, right? First read, maybe second read, and he can be quick and decisive with the football. That's when Justin looks good passing the ball. When it starts to get away from him is when you have to start to go second read, third read, back to first read. It takes a little more processing time, and it feels like he does not see the field as well as you'd like. He misses guys. He had a couple nice balls, and the ball to Pickens that Pickens made the incredible catch on was not a great ball. If he puts that ball a little more out in front of him, it's a touchdown. Not the best ball. He threw a halfway decent ball.
And it's late in the game. It feels like it was placating
really
Pickens at that point. Yeah,
absolutely it was. No question about it. It was just trying to keep George from throwing a temper tantrum again. And he threw a halfway decent pass to that was just out of the reach, I think, of Calvin Austin on one. Just a little bit, but it was a better throw. He put it where only Calvin Austin would have had a shot at it. Little too long. He threw a couple other nice balls, but when he throws the best ball, the best ball he threw all night was the one where he scrambled to the right to the left, and threw it either to Calvin Austin again, I think. Was a very nice ball. But it's just he's too inconsistent, and it feels like when the play comes off of the way it was designed and he has to improvise, he just misses guys and he makes mistakes, and that's when he's more likely to just run. And that's kind of a problem, because if your first option is taken away, which I think a lot of times that's going to happen, you need to be able to find that second option and that second level to go to.
Yeah, and it's not. That's why I felt like it was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. Chargers, Colts, felt like he's standing in there making some of those plays when he does have to use his feet, or it's smart to, or he can move the chains. That's great. Let's live the fight another day. But again, we're looking at this possession chart, the after the block by Jeremiah Moon, which was crazy, wild.
Yes, that was great.
Punt. About as perfection as you could get as he comes in at an angle and doesn't hit the punter, Cole, who's got a leg and a half on him. These punters make me jealous. Although Waitman's done well, I will admit. Waitman, sometimes the touchback or in the 20 could be in. That's really why he's not on a roster. But the guy's at least able to, he's not shanking it for 19 yards in a critical moment like Presley Harvin was. So he's been able to, he's been an improvement, but he's not the guy that Cameron Johnston was going to be when he got hurt. But after the block, you still only got 4 plays and they lost 5 yards. They started on the 9-yard line and only got a field goal out of that. And at this point, you're still like, are you kidding me? After the 2-point conversion, everything like that, it still felt like too tight of a game where you're going to keep the Raiders in this. And we've seen it. Like, this unheard of backup quarterback is going to throw all over the field. You can't cover Brock Bowers, and that's going to be all she wrote. Now, the Raiders couldn't run the football for diddly squat. 19 attempts for 57 yards. And then, of course, they fumbled twice on carries. just don't even give them the ball. Let's just see what else can we do. DJ Turner or something like that. There's nobody to throw the ball to. They had nothing but tight ends that were left, really. Yeah. So, but O'Connell, like I said, he had 227 yards. He ends up passing for more and completing more, a higher completion percentage, and even has a touchdown pass that Fields doesn't have. And that it is concerning. He even has a higher rating. I know, 32-13. Steelers get the victory, right? But these drives, you had the one that was 7 for 65 with the touchdown. They got the one off the fumble, and they end up doing nothing with it. They end up punting. 8 plays, 38 yards, just to get over towards midfield, and then you start making mistakes, whether it's a holding penalty. And some of that, too, is guys moving. Field starts moving in a different direction. The guy's blocking, and now all of a sudden it's a hold because you're now behind him. Doesn't let go. There's a couple that were bad. I think you mentioned Washington. I think that one was about as legit as could be. It is frustrating.
He could have gotten called for 3 others.
Yeah, but on the flip side, it's frustrating because you're watching TJ Watt and you're seeing guys just like pull everywhere, like they're literally disrobing him at times, and you can't get. Has there been a holding call that TJ Watt has influenced this season that I can't think of one. Maybe Herbig did from the other direction. Yeah. But I can't really.
Highsmith had one, but I don't know because they're not going. They just aren't. They're not going to call. They're not going to call holding on TJ. They're just not going to.
Yeah, and so the rest of this was one play for 7 yards following the interception. Dante Jackson. Every time that the Steelers are playing, I do feel like that was the right move, making that trade for Deontay Johnson. Because who else would they have had playing next to Joey Porter? It would have probably been a much larger liability had they not made this trade for Jackson. And Jackson, he's been creating the turnovers. He's been getting the football. He's been knocking some of them down when people try and pick on him instead of Joey. I don't know if Joey falling around with Bowers at one point was really the smartest game planning. But it is what it is there. And then the final 2 drives, 6 for 18 with the field goal. They started the Vegas 36, 6 plays, 18 yards. It's not a whole lot. There's like some struggle there. Now, some of that's like, okay, we're going to start running the ball, maybe not doing as much here. But like I said, the one with Pickens. Now, Pickens also looked like he was ready to just shut up and do what was asked of him, make the extra play. The one of the 2 catches that he had, diving out to try to get the first down, leaning out. I was like, okay, maybe a little bit too much, dude. Don't go out there and separate your shoulder. We don't need anything like that.
Yeah.
But, quiet day, even when the ball wasn't coming his way, and winning cures all. To see the Steelers have 32 points is better than not. But we still see some kind of cracks in this as the Jets are looming next on the schedule, and then the Giants after him. And Giants playing some pretty tough defense for the most part. They folded, like one of those chairs that you use for a graduation party right at the end of that game against the Bengals. But otherwise,
well, here's how bad does the Giants offense have to be that they can't score against the Bengals? The Bengals defense is like Swiss cheese. It has been all year. I mean, they're lucky when they win a shootout, and they barely beat the Giants because, I mean, the Giants,
bad, dude.
Yeah, just,
so bad. I mean, like comically bad. I'm like, I don't want to sit in a glass house and throw rocks. The Steelers still scored 30 points and probably left some more on the board too. And we definitely feel like. I mean, it wasn't the Lions against the Cowboys. Now, people were trying to figure that out. Now, Cowboys came into Pittsburgh off of a mini bye, which also helped them kind of outlast, especially on a long night. I think the central time zone, that hour back behind, it helps with the conditioning their body. It's not to make a ton of excuses. Both teams have to play in the conditions, but they just played the Steelers. And guess what happens when you get done playing the Steelers or Ravens, when that physical brand of football, and they got to go somewhere else and play another team that's physical brand of football coming off a bye. The Lions just blew the doors, and the Lions were pissed off about last year and wanted to make a statement. When you do a hook and ladder to Penei Sewell, like, what on earth is that? So just be thankful that, as Steelers fans, we're not dealing with that kind of sort of thing. It's like the Steelers are sitting at 4-2 and you feel pretty good, but could you feel better? And I think that's what we're trying to say is that nothing is really a gimme. The Raiders did a lot to shoot themselves in the foot. They turned the ball over 3 times and then had the major penalties that shot themselves in the foot. And it could take any of those back, and maybe it's a little bit closer of a game. It's hard to justify when you got 32 points to the other team, right?
Yeah.
But that's the way I'm looking at it. And when you're looking at Justin Fields, sub 60% completion percentage, 14 of 24, yeah, he could run around 145 yards. Is that really going to get it done? We were more excited last year when Kenny Pickett had 235 yards, 2 touchdowns against this, not the same Raiders team, but against the Raiders. Is it much different? Can the Steelers still win with Fields not even throwing for 200 yards and just hand the ball? I don't know. I don't see that against the Jets or Giants.
If they're going to get 3 turnovers, if they're going to get, a blocked kick or punt, maybe they can win that way. But you can't, again, that's what we're talking about. It's not sustainable. You cannot depend on we've seen what happens the last 2 games when they don't. Hell, they won the turnover battle in one of those games and lost the game.
Exactly.
We've seen what happens when they don't get all of those turnovers and they don't get all those splash plays, and it isn't good. I can tell you, look, I felt pretty good after the second game of the season, not because of the offense, right? I thought I was not feeling good about the offense, but the defense was playing at such a high level. Then we start losing guys. We start getting hurt. We start getting dinged, and that has continued. Now the defense, look, it's just a different world when you've got TJ on one side and you can send 3 guys after him because you don't care about the guy on the other side and they're not getting pressure, right? It's a different situation. It was going to be one thing with Herbig, right? Instead of Highsmith, I think that would have worked out. But it's just not the same anymore. And so I'm nervous about the defense. So right now, I don't feel good about any of these upcoming games right now, because I don't know how you can, right? The Jets have a legit defense. I know you and I were talking about whether that's whatever his name is. I don't even want to try and say his name. They got fired. Salah, blah, blah, whatever his name.
Yeah, Robert Salah.
Yeah. And, whether that's the whole thing. But they have legitimate players. They can play defense. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has looked like Mr. Inconsistent and overrated so far this year.
Yeah, Father Time catching up maybe after a serious injury too. Yeah.
Doesn't scare the crap out of me on the offensive side, but we're going to struggle to put up points. The Giants, legit defense apparently. We may struggle to put up points. Apparently they can't score at all, but do I feel like comfortable? I don't know. I don't know what Alex Highsmith's timetable is. I don't know what Nick Herbig's timetable is, right? I don't know when we're going to start to get some of those pieces back so that the defense is running more at full capacity than it is right now. By the time we get to the Commanders and the second half of the season, I hope we're in much better shape because that's going to be brutal. So, we could go through the next 2 games and be 4-4. We could be 6-4. We could have been 6-0 right now,
or 6-2,
or 6-2. Yeah, 6-2. It could go either way. I'm just not comfortable, and I don't think you can be. So the question, and I know where you're going with all this because we've talked about it. The question is, do you just stand pat at this point and go, here's where we are, this is what we're doing, or do you try and see whether the guy who's been hurt and now is at full capacity is going to be a better fit in this offense than Justin Fields?
Yeah, it's been our question pretty much every week. And a lot of people are going to say, well, what did Justin Fields really do to lose this job? They just won 32-13. You look at the previous 2 games, you look at this game, you look at the overall body of how slow the offensive starts have been. You go back to the possessions of this game where, you have before the touchdown, before halftime, which, you're hurrying up a little bit more. They got the ball 2:32 Now you're ready to almost run your 2-minute drill. And you got the ball off a fumble on the 30-yard line. You only had to go 18 yards or so. 6 plays, 18 yards total. They got penalty yards out of it, like we mentioned, and the ball would have been turned over if not for the penalty. And you wouldn't even have gotten that one on the board, and you would have went into halftime down 7-6 against this Raiders team. And they've surprised people, but again, it was 2 field goals, 2 punts, and the slow starts when Fields starts to put it on and see the field, but it just didn't feel like he was getting there. I don't know. I can't even say like road games, because almost every one of these games, sans maybe Denver. I know there were Steelers fans in Denver, but when you're in a dome and it gets noisier, there was a lot of Steelers fans in Atlanta. I was there in Indy as well. Vegas, they were showing it even on TV. You could just see the terrible towels flying. You could hear the crowd noise, and that's to his favor. So you can't really even say it's like a hostile environment. The more hostile environment was the damn Cowboys game where the defense is trying to get their call and Patrick Queen's trying to get it in his helmet. So in the closed end zone where it's noisier and there's a bunch of Cowboys fans. So, it comes back around and, they bite you. But the slow starts, there's just not the consistency there that you would like. Mark Caboli, not sure. He's kind of just his own correspondent now. I think working with Pat McAfee, but formerly The Athletic and for Pittsburgh media for a long time covering the Steelers. He tweeted out something to the effect of, when Justin Fields looks good, he looks good. And when Justin Fields looks bad, he looks bad. And there's really no middle ground between that.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm 100% going to agree with that, because he didn't look good yesterday, but he didn't really look bad. He just didn't look good, right? He looked mediocre yesterday.
Okay,
right,
fair.
He made mistakes, the over the line of scrimmage. Got to be more aware.
Yeah, that one.
Got to be more aware. He's made some dumb mistakes like that in almost every single game, right? Whether it's the running around like a crazy man. There were a couple times where he evaded, scrambled out of sacks and out of danger, but scared the crap out of me when he threw the ball over his head.
Oh yeah, I know
that was fraught with peril.
Well, these are good. See, these are the points that needed to be driven home, because you're getting drunk off of a victory.
Yeah.
And I hold on. I actually saved it. I tagged it. His first half statistics were Fields was 10 of 17, 58% for 83 yards, and he took a sack. They didn't have really anything there. It was almost the same exact thing for the second half of this game, because he would only attempt 7 more passes. Now, he got those 7 passes. He got 70 yards. One of them was the long Pickens one where you've got George Pickens.
At the end of the game, yeah.
That's literally, he's Neo out of the Matrix that can make some of these like highlight reel catches. Can you imagine, like you had said, if you just lead him a little bit? Like Ben Roethlisberger, if he has Pickens, like Pickens is like all day looking like an all-pro at this point, I think. At least prime Ben,
Yeah.
So do you make this change? And people are talking about offensive line. Can they protect Russell Wilson? Well, Russell Wilson's probably going to get rid of the football. Hopefully. These are the 2 guys that have held on to the ball more than anybody. If you've got the right offense and the right supporting cast, I think Wilson, he has the arm. I think he has the accuracy. I think he could throw guys open. Is he capable of escaping if necessary? I don't think he's the same extend the play, but we mentioned this again. The difference between these 2 guys looking down the field is that, Justin isn't finding the guys. So he's not really extending the play, where Russell Wilson's trying to extend the play, and he's making and he's processing and he's collecting all this. And you got to take into account, I know Fields, there's some things you would like to see him do or do differently or do better. 4th year in the league versus Russ having been around 11 years or whatever it is, and being 35 years old. He's probably not going to run around and give you that same element, but that doesn't mean that they're going to bench, I think, Fields 100% of the way. They might actually bring him in for some type of package.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
unless he makes a real boneheaded mistake, gets you out of scoring position or something like that, like a short yardage situation or a goal line. And he's very difficult to cover when it comes to his feet. It's just there's something with the mental aspect or reading what's available on the field. People will all day be like, well, that guy's not open. That guy's not open. That's 95% of the NFL. I'm watching Jaden Daniels out there. You think Jaden Daniels is waiting? It's like when I'm waiting to make a turn onto a busy road and the person in front of me has to wait for every single car to come down and pass through the intersection so it's safe to make that turn. Whereas me, I see this one car is going just a little slower and boom, I'm right in and I'm merging into traffic. It is the exact kind of sentiment when it comes to having a Justin Fields versus Russell Wilson comparison. I think Fields is the one that's playing it a little safe because Jaden Daniels against the Ravens is throwing guys open and they're making those plays. And there's no reason that somebody like the Commanders can do that with a rookie quarterback where the Steelers can't. I mean, Terry McLaurin and George Pickens, those are prime wide receivers. So why can't we have nice things too, Brian?
Because we can't have nice things. I mean, I will tell you my gut. My gut is that Tomlin will not make a change in the Jets game. But that if, in fact, they either lose the Jets game or they look as inept as they have at times, when we get to the Giants game, he may. That's just my gut. But it is not inconceivable. Now I feel like I have to do a inconceivable Princess Bride. It's not inconceivable that they look at the way that this game went and make the change. What I would have liked, you and I talked about this during the game, what I would have liked is that last series where we're up by enough, there's no risk, put Russ in, let him run a drive and see, is he crisp? Is he accurate? Is he doing the things you want to do? Because it doesn't matter, right? If he makes a mistake, you're still safe, right?
Yeah.
Put him in, let him run the drive. I would have liked to see that.
Was that too risky? Was it too risky though? I mean, he was the backup. Did you feel that maybe at one point? Yeah, I didn't think it was risky either. Just to throw that out there, it's like let's get this guy some reps. It's the same thing as putting a backup out there to give them some real regular season experience. But did you feel at any point though? I think up until halftime, if the Steelers would have went into the locker room 7-6, I wonder if Russell Wilson would have been warming up at half. I think those questions. And how does this affect Justin Fields? We're talking about Najee. He's looking over his shoulder at Jaylen Warren, and he's running hard. He's about to get another Harry Potter stick from Kyle Brandt on Good Morning Football. And does this affect Justin Fields at all? Is he like a little bit, oh man, Russell he's full participant now, taking some, reps in practice and whatnot. Do I have to do anything differently? Like when we saw do different things differently with Mitch Trubisky, ironically ahead of a Jets or during a Jets game a couple of years ago, that was, I just throw it around and I'm going to gunsling, even though I'm not a gunslinger, and he turns the ball over and he gets yanked. So I just wonder if that was the play it safe analogy that I had earlier.
One of the things I will give Justin Fields a lot of credit for is I think he is a level-headed guy, right? And he said in interviews, I've been in competition. I've always been looking over my shoulder day one, no matter what. The minute Russ, I lost the quarterback competition. I was the backup. I lost. So the starter's coming back. I don't think he's going to push, right? I think he accepts that if it happens, it happens. And to be honest with you, at some point it is going to happen, right? It's when is that point going to be? At some point, you're going to have to see what does Russell Wilson give you, right? That's different. You've seen what Justin Fields can do.
Yes.
You've seen it over 6 games now. You got a good sense of what he can do. You've got a good sense of what his flaws are. You need to understand the same things about Russell Wilson, because at some point towards the end of this season, you got to start making some choices about what you're doing for next year. because you got neither one of these guys on the roster.
Well, I was going to say, when does that decision happen? You have back-to-back home games in primetime for the first back-to-back home games of the season against both New York teams. And then you have a bye week after that, and you have to go to Washington. So does it happen before? Or do you take that full bye week and now hand it over? Like, it's just crazy because Tomlin has gotten so much out of bad quarterbacking over the years. We can go back to a first time playing Mason Rudolph with no quarterbacks coach and everything, and switching off with Duck Hodges, and he's had to play guys like Dennis Dixon before, and Charlie Batch, and Byron Leftwich, and I mean, geez, Kyle Allen,
Mitch Trubisky,
and Kenny Pickett's. I mean, even during Ben's time, though, there were backups that were in, and Tomlin was able to still have this team playing at a certain like competitive 500 or better level, even without a superstar quarterback. Always be Landry Jones, Michael Vick.
Yeah,
I mean, there's countless times where we've seen it. This isn't just like, you know, the New York Giants that had Eli Manning, and Eli Manning never gets yanked, never gets hurt, plays all 16 games in a season. No, Tomlin's had to deal with this stuff before. He knows how to weather this storm, and he's such a stickler. He's such a, what would I want to say, set in his ways. I mean, Roman Wilson finally gets out there. You didn't even know Roman Wilson played, right?
You saw that they highlighted the fact that he was in the game, right?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Roman Wilson's in the game, and you know, nobody ever looks at him.
It was the wrong Wilson that I was talking about being in there, but regardless, you still have to be somewhat concerned with the defense. They had their flaws. You're still waiting to see. Hopefully, Highsmith is within that window to be back against the Jets. It'll be huge for this team.
Will be major. That
Majorly
will be very
huge
big.
when you got somebody that's going to be able to diagnose like Aaron Rodgers. But now, do you risk things on the offensive side of the ball? Do you have a new center? Do you have another offensive lineup again for the 7th game of the season? So these are the things that we're going to be pondering. It's going to be asked, and then Tomlin's going to be non-committal about it this week. And he's going to leave the Jets guessing. He's going to, the one saving grace here, I think, is that the Jets are going to be playing the Monday night game here against the Bills. That'll be played after we're already recording this ahead of that. And they'll have a short week and have to go on the road to Pittsburgh. And then the Steelers will get like an extra day and play a Monday night before they go into the bye. It's actually one of the better setups in their schedule, because later in the year it sucks. And some of their opponents are not the way you don't want to go to Philadelphia and Baltimore back to back and then host the Kansas City Chiefs on a short week. That is just brutal. But right now it favors them. And it wouldn't surprise it. Let's put it this way. I don't think either direction would surprise me, but I think the more that Justin just isn't going out there and leading these early touchdown drives, and they got to rely on the defense to gift them, or the referees to gift them something, and they respond and they score. Pickett and Trubisky weren't even doing that with the Matt Canada offense. It was terrible. Yeah. And you were just like, geez, can you win a game with only 12 points from 4 Boswell field goals? So I still at least feel comfortable enough that they could stick with Fields. But when he's not out there throwing touchdown passes, multiple touchdown passes, and he's almost running for more yards or half as many yards as he's throwing, it's not doing him any favors to hold on and keep that starting job.
Agreed. This is a much different offense than it has been in recent years past. You do have more faith that they can move the ball and they can get things done. You're more excited that they have some potential. They just aren't putting it all together yet.
Yep, I'm with you, dude. I don't think it's Arthur Smith either. I know a lot of people like the finger point. I didn't like
the hinky, stupid flea flicker, but
whatever. It's execution wise, it actually looked like they would have gotten it if one guy didn't completely figure it out, being unblocked and standing in the backfield waiting to. He might as well giving him the ball too. Looked like he was ready to be handed off to. So it certainly wasn't anything that was on film. And it's really, if that's the biggest complaint, the penalties do have to get cleaned up, and we do know that there's inconsistency with that offensive line. But yeah, we shall see how this goes. Brian, thanks for joining me once again, my friend. hopefully we don't sound like we're so down. We're happy to have a win. We're happy to be 4-2. We believe this team could have been as much as 6-0 at this point. So it's just
here. Let me just say this.
Okay.
If you follow me on Facebook, a friend of mine from high school will always tell me I need to put on my happy face, and this is what I do. This is my happy face.
You're like Grumpy Cat.
This is me being happy about the win.
I mean, yeah. And when do you ever hear us like acknowledge that? Well, if the referees wouldn't have given you one or two of these here or there,
and
even like the spots there were spots that were good and bad in that game too, that benefited and didn't with the Steelers. I thought for one there was going to be a challenge. Could have even been one. I'm trying not to conflate some other games. There was a lot of bad officiating yesterday. I had about everything on. I watched the early games, watched the late games, had the red zone going at the same time. Just watching it, like, why couldn't the Steelers have done this to the Cowboys? And that's not a valid comment when I saw that out there. Same thing as why isn't Spillane on this team? Well, that's why Spillane is on this team. Patrick Queen had a better game, I feel. Landon Roberts
Queen played a nice game.
Roberts has been playing very nice.
Yeah.
But you look at the Lions, and unfortunately, one of those top picks. I mean, they were perpetually bad, worst teams in the NFL, picking at the top of the draft. Finally got a coach, GM that put some of that together, and you got guys like Aiden Hutchinson who snapped his leg, unfortunately. So we'll see what goes from there. But they tailored an offense for Jared Goff. The coaching was able to do something with them. They turned a Matt Stafford trade into some other collateral. They lucked out with an Amon-Ra St. Brown. They've got the Gibbs and some of the backs that they've got, and the Sam Laporta, and they drafted well. They got some guys at the top of the draft, Jamison Williams, that's like a dude. And when you look at it from that collection, those guys that are on rookie deals, and then you spent money and added some other free agents into that mix, it ain't no wonder that they're a contender in the way that they are. The Steelers have not had that same type of luxury. They do have some cheap quarterbacks on the roster right now, but is it getting them over the hill? I mean, it's amazing to me. I thought Jared Goff was kind of cooked, and you look around the league at like Goff, what Darnold was doing before the bye.
Yeah, Darnold.
Baker Mayfield leading the NFL with 14 touchdowns.
Did you see the meme that's going out about Cleveland? What could have been, and they're talking about if they it's like going a back in time thing, like, oh, thank God they didn't do that ridiculous trade, and we still have Baker Mayfield, and we've now won a Super Bowl, and oh, we're 6-1, and starting the year we're doing great. I'm like, I don't think that there's necessarily any truth to any of that, but Baker Mayfield's certainly making them feel really bad about that. And boy, what are they going to do? What are they going to do at the end? He stinks so bad. He's so awful. Like now I get my happy face. I can talk about how bad the Browns are. They lost again. The Eagles aren't even good. My brother, who's an Eagles fan, thought that the Eagles were going to lose to the Browns, and he's like, I don't know how we won the game. We stink. They stink. Oh my God. I actually feel bad for Myles Garrett. That's how bad Sean Watson is. I feel bad for Myles Garrett playing hurt, and that's the kind of quarterbacking you have. I feel bad for the guy.
Yeah, he had a blocked field goal too, and then you couldn't hear anything more than blah, 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 blah. Look how great he is, defensive player of the year. And I'm just like, look what TJ did in this game here. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff, it gets under my skin. They're in a hole that even if, they've got to play the Steelers and the Ravens twice still. And you know what? They haven't had a divisional game yet. They will play the Bengals next week. Then they get the Bengals, Ravens, and Chargers, then a bye week. And then they're playing they don't have any more back-to-back home games after the bye week. They're going to play 3 in a row at home. They're not going to go anywhere. So they're going to host the Bengals, Ravens, and the Chargers. They get the bye week. They go to New Orleans and then host Pittsburgh, then go to Denver and Pittsburgh, and then host the Chiefs, go to Cincinnati, host the Dolphins in December, which that could be a toss-up there. Usually Florida teams aren't going to like that December 29th weather in Cleveland off the lake, especially a Sunday night football game if it doesn't get flexed, and then they got to go play at Baltimore to end their season. So I'm sitting over here and I'm just kind of like, I'm trying to not be too, what do you want to say, pompous at the moment, because I do realize that the Steelers, well, the getting is good right now. It could be a little bit of a facade. But the Steelers, at least, they're beating the teams that they should be beating, and the other two games were very close. So they're going to have some.
They should have beaten the Colts.
Should have beaten the Colts too.
Shouldn't have beaten the Colts. They mostly are winning the games they should be winning.
Yeah, we had them dropping to the Cowboys, but we even said the first quarter of the season, Brian, we were like, they got to drop one of these somewhere. They can't be 4-0. Yeah. And there it was. So, I mean, it's just being fair, trying to be realistic. And, man, I mean, the Bengals, that's a big hole, too. These teams that lose, like, have 4 losses at the very beginning of that season. It don't matter who's on the end of their schedule, because you just never know who's going to turn up, who's going to show up. Like New England could all of a sudden end up being like a competitive team, even though they look really bad at times right now, and a rookie quarterback and whatnot. So with that said, we'll put a ball on this show. And thank you once again for joining me. And we're going to do this again, and we'll be previewing the Jets later this week, folks. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Brian, thanks for joining us once again.
Thanks, sir. Always happy to be here.
Yeah, you sure show it. So, folks, that'll do it for us. Once again, don't forget to follow us wherever you may watch or listen to the show. I know a lot of you watch on YouTube, but we also have a Spotify video feed. We also have an audio one, because we have 2 Spotify feeds. Don't ask me why, but
we're fancy.
It works. Yeah, we're fancy because it worked out that way. So it wasn't intentional originally. And we have some shorter form content too. So don't forget to follow us on Facebook, X, even the old TikTok. We're on the TikTok. Even the old guys are on the TikTok. So till next time.
Oh, don't put me on TikTok. I don't want to be on the TikTok.
You've been on the TikTok. You're already TikToking. So till next time, folks. My name's Joe. His name's Brian. We encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.